Okay, this is a test. Test the lighting, test the sound, and attempt to share an online video of yoga. And I don't really know where to start with that. I'm not doing a full practice today, but I thought I would share a few of the elements that are really important for yoga, and especially in the way that I teach. So yoga is such a vast, I don't even know what to call it, field, I suppose. And everyone approaches it differently. And the only thing that I can share with you is my journey. And when asked, why do I teach? One of the main reasons I teach is I want to encourage people to develop their own practice and have a relationship with that practice on a daily basis. So for today, I am going to share with you the structure of how I teach when I am developing a class. Talk about a few elements, show you a couple of examples of poses and postures and things like that. And then we'll call it a wrap and we'll see how this comes out on the other side. So the first thing that I do when I'm teaching a class is I start the class in a centering pose. Now that pose, the purpose of that pose is to take a moment for transition before getting into movement of the body. It's an opportunity to stop what you're currently doing and move towards something else. And I think in life we forget about these transitions and how important they are. In order to be present in what you're currently doing, you have to turn away from all of the things that led you up to that moment. And so that's what I offer, generally about 5 minutes in an hour-long class of a transition. A couple of poses for that transition are Shavasana, and that is laying down on your back, arms and legs extended. If the low back bothers you here, bend the knees, plant the feet, and draw the knees in towards one another. Gently relax through the lower back area. So Shavasana is wonderful. It does open up the front of the body, and so you still have the environment coming towards you. Another pose I like is Crocodile. Crocodile is on your belly, with the elbows under the shoulders. Now, the hands can clasp the elbows, the feet can turn out and widen slightly so you can relax through your hips. If this doesn't feel good for your shoulders, you can come down a little with the elbows. You could also stack the fists to release your forehead. You can bring your arms out to goalposts and turn your head to one side. The thing that I like most about Crocodile is you're turning away from the world. Another option is Child's Pose. So for Child's Pose, you could sit your hips onto your heels, reach your arms forward, or even bring your arms around to the back, palms facing up, giving yourself a place to rest your forehead. Yoga props can be really helpful for that. A yoga block can provide a place to rest. So ideally, you're finding a pose where you're comfortable. You can stay for 5 minutes. You can turn your focus to your breath. Just taking a moment to develop your relationship with your breath. The breath shows you so many things just by paying attention to the qualities of breath. So for example, the depth of your breath, noticing if you're breathing deep or shallow, noticing if the breath is even on your inhale and exhale. These are ways that you can check into the energy of your body and see what patterns arise. It can also give you an idea of some of the things that you can work on, because remember, everything that we do on the mat also translates into what we do in our lives through relationships, through the physical body, through the mental aspects of the mind, and through the emotional body. Now, after Shavasana or some other centering pose, I would offer a warm-up. And the things that I want to warm up are the joints, the spine, the hips, things like that. So a couple of poses that are good for that are cat and cow, warming up the spine. So stacking the joints, the shoulders over the wrists, the hips over the knees, gaze down towards your mat. Then round up through the spine, tuck the chin, the tailbone, and then release yourself down. You can even curl your toes under for a cow pose here, looking up towards the ceiling. So alternating between these postures is a great way to warm up the spine. Additionally, you could tip side to side, just drawing one shoulder to your hip, opposite shoulder, keeping the spine long so your gaze is still directly in front of the hands, so you're not dropping the head here. Now, another thing to warm up would be shoulders. You can do that in several ways. I often like to spider my fingers and reach one arm up, take some big shoulder circles in both directions. You can even flip just over to the other side. You can take shoulder rolls or even draw your shoulders up to your ears and then let them drop away. So lots of ways to move through the shoulders. You can work with your neck here as well, just tipping the head side to side or doing some neck rolls. One thing that I like to do with the hips is work on mobility. So if you turn one leg inward and one leg outward, this will help work with the balance within the hip structure. So you might notice that one hip wants to pop up as you move from side to side. Now, using your hands or not using your hands, just switch sides. It's an easy way to warm up your hips. It's also a good way to sense your balance. You could come up as well. We know from the sit to stand longevity tests that being able to get up and down off the floor without using your hands is a sign of longevity. So it's something that you can work on. It also activates the core muscles. So these are just different ways of warming up through some of the joints of the body. And then I would want to begin to strengthen and build some of the fire up as well. A couple of options there are spinal balance. So drawing one hand forward and the opposite leg back. Just staying here with your breath, or you could alternate side to side. There are a few options here with spinal balance. So this is working those stability muscles that help keep you upright. Now, it's also important to work the core muscles here to build the fire. A simple way of doing that is just boat pose. Finding your sit bones, keeping your chest lifted, shoulders relaxed. Rock off your sit bones and find that core engagement. You can hold, you could alternate legs, you could lift your legs or reach up. Again, you're just activating the fire. Lots of other abdominal options here. Now, once we've done a little warm up, we've activated the fire, that would be a good time to go into some more mobility options or even strength. So this would be our standing postures. Now you can get there in several different ways. I often offer downward facing dog, which is making an upside down V with the body, taking a moment to pedal out your feet and nod your head, shake it. Then you can walk your hands back to your feet or even tiptoe your feet up to your hands. This is forward fold. You can do a little shake here. Notice any tightness is in the back of the body. And then either hinge at your hip or roll yourself up to standing. Now, with our standing postures, it's often described as we have closed hip postures and open hip postures, but our hips move in different ways. So I don't like to define them quite so pinpointedly.
But there is a posture where you're open to the long end of your mat, and that's warrior two. I'll give you an example. My left foot is forward. My left toes are pointing towards the short end, but my right toes are pointing a little bit towards the long end of the mat. So my right foot is kicked in slightly, with the heel being the furthest from the center of my body. In warrior two, you're looking to center your gravity between your legs, and you're lunging. So you're working on strength in the legs as well. The arm variations there's just so many. Oftentimes you'll see warrior two with the arms reaching out about shoulder height, shoulders relaxed, hands reaching, right? So the hands are active. And then often there's a drishti, or a gaze in yoga. And for this particular pose, the gaze is over the front hand, softening the gaze on that middle finger. So finding a little fuzziness. There are many other postures where the hips are in this direction. There is reverse warrior, side angle, extended side angle. There's triangle, so the front leg is straight. We can go into balancing postures here. Again, lots of variations. Now, the other common standing posture is warrior one. So for this example, I'll take my right foot forward, step my left foot back, and turn my left toes out just slightly. So the left foot will be angled according to the safety of your back knee, which is different for every body. I don't believe in universal alignment. I think that we're all slightly different. And so any pain in the back knee would be an indicator that that angle of the back foot needs to be changed slightly. Again, we're working on strength here. So there's a lunge into the front leg. The weight is evenly distributed between both legs. And the arms, lots of options. If you reach your arms up and you feel any pinching in your shoulders, it can be helpful to open your arms more towards a V. It just depends on the width of the shoulders and that shoulder mobility. You want to make sure that you're comfortable enough to hold a steady breath and the posture. Just as with warrior two, there are lots of options here with warrior one. In regards to the hands, but also just different poses where your hips are kind of facing that short end of the mat. I'm losing my train of thought. Okay, so one of the common postures is a humble warrior. So it's a folding over that front leg. Now the hands can be on your hips. They can reach behind you with a little chest expansion here. You can drop your right shoulder on the inside of your right knee. Another posture here is to fold completely over and even straighten the right leg. Pyramid or angle pose. Again, just with warrior two, warrior one can lead you into some balance postures. And that brings us to another segment of postures, which are balance postures. Probably the most common is our tree pose. Now with any balance posture, in my belief, my theory of yoga is that it's an attempt to throw you off balance so that you're practicing balancing versus finding that perfect pose and holding it with rigidity. We don't want rigidity in our bodies. We don't want rigidity in our lives. So it's finding that fluid ability for the body to rebalance as you practice. So this would be a great time for balance postures. It would also be a good time, now that the body is warm, the fire is picked up, you can do inversion. So this would be handstand or shoulder stand or headstand. Perfect opportunity for that. And then the next little segment here would be back bending. I really like camel pose because it focuses on opening the chest. Any type of back bend is going to increase energy. So you might feel like the energy is lifted slightly. And so this is a great segue into letting you know that you can utilize these postures anytime during your day. So if you're feeling that slump in the afternoon, camel pose is great for that. You can even support your low back with your hands, draw your elbows in, just begin to look up towards the ceiling and breathing deeply into your chest. If you breathe for a few moments with camel pose and then draw yourself up, you may feel like you've got a bit more energy. Now, another common back bend is our cobra pose. So coming down onto your belly, I like to start with Sphinx, which is just a little back bend with the elbows down on the mat, the forearms on the mat, and the fingers spread wide with the chest lifted. The reason I like this is it's a little more passive, and you can really sense into your low back. This is more of a stretch. You're opening through your chest. You're keeping the shoulders away from the ears. If you release yourself down enough where you can slide your hands back under your shoulders, you can start with your forehead on the mat, elbows in, press into your feet and into your hips. You can begin to lift through the muscles of the back of the body. Now, often people want to press into your hands, and it looks really cool to be able to come up like this. But if you want to work on strength, I invite you to keep the elbows in and then don't press into your hands. Use the muscles along the back of the body to lift you. You'll want to make sure you're still breathing. And you can release down, press yourself up, and come back to a seat. So in our back bends, you can hold. You could do a couple at a time, come down, rest, try again. There are lots of different ways to incorporate back bends, and there are so many. This is just an idea of a few. Once you've incorporated some back bends, seated postures and twists and things like that would be great here in your personal practice. So a good example of a seated twist is to send one leg forward, take the other leg across, and just guide yourself into a twist. The thing that's important with twists is that you're moving through the thoracic spine, or the middle part of your back. A lot of people don't move their shoulders, they just move their head. And so while that does twist the cervical spine has a lot of movement, but often we get stuck in the core of the body. So by working with your belly button and then your rib cage and then your shoulders, it will really help work those targeted areas of the spine, giving yourself more space. More space and more capacity in your physical body means you translate that into more capacity, opportunity in your daily lives. So again, what we practice on the mat is shows up in our lives, and that's a really wonderful thing. So a seated twist, perhaps moving right into a forward fold posture. Now, as we get towards the end of a practice, we'll hold the poses a little bit longer, focus a little bit more intently on the breath, and then also take a little bit more of an inward focus. So I always invite you, in fact, if you watch me do my personal practice, most of the time my eyes are closed, because I don't want my attention and my energy going outward. I want to direct it inward so that I can really sense into what I'm feeling. Now, with a single leg forward fold, one leg is forward, the other leg is, that foot is touching the inner thigh, but you could do this several different ways. So I'm just showing you one option today. You can walk the hands down, come into a fold. Something to pay attention to is the hips. So you want to make sure that both of your sit bones, those bony parts of the hips, are touching the mat. Oftentimes one will lift, so settle into the hips. That may limit how far you can go forward, and that's okay. And then breathe. You can use something called a sinking breath, where on your inhale you come out slightly and on your exhale you go a little deeper, or you can just hold and pause. Another option would be a straddle. So it's just a slightly different posture for the hips. Again, finding those sit bones can be really helpful here. Make sure they're both connected, and then come forward. So taking several breaths, maybe closing your eyes. Oftentimes I bring some movement into these postures just to see where I feel stuck. So perhaps walking your hands from one side to the other, or just pausing in stillness. And then after you've done a few seated postures, then you can move towards reclined, restorative postures. That could be a reclined twist, but one of my favorites is a supported bridge, and so I'll show that one to you. If you have a block, a blanket, a pillow, you can really use anything. You could even use a big stack of books if you'd like. Bringing yourself down, letting your knees be bent. Feet are on the floor. You can use your feet to press into your hips, lift the hips up. Set the block under the sacrum, or the bony part of the lower back, so that it can be supported while you rest here. Just like our seated postures, as we move more towards the end of our practice, we'll hold the position a little bit longer. It's always a wonderful invitation to close your eyes, focus on your breath, and just let the body be supported by the prop, by your mat, by the floor. Saying, if you can move towards an energy of effortlessness. Another posture that's nice here at the end of your practice is happy baby. So drawing the knees towards your armpits, the feet go up to the sky with the knees bent. You can take your hands somewhere on your feet, your big toes. If you can't reach, even your pant leg works. You can find stillness, a little rock. Try to keep the tailbone down towards the mat so you're not hiking yourself up. You can draw the soles of your feet together and pull your feet towards your hips, knees out to the side. This is a reclined butterfly. You could put your feet on the floor, let your knees come out, either with your arms down by your side or reaching your arms up. And then always end your practice with Shavasana, making sure you're comfortable. And that could be just like we started, with the feet on the mat, the knees in towards one another. Taking this time to let the body digest your experience. So often we try to use the mind to tell us what was good, what was bad, all of those things. But the body can digest it without the mind. So just be. You can turn your focus towards your breath. This is a practice that we use moving towards concentration. And so there are 8 limbs of yoga. We have the physical postures, we have the breath practices, we have a withdrawing of the senses, right, into that internal energetic experience. We have concentration. So learning how to direct your attention and focus on your yoga mat translates wonderfully into your life. How many times do you go throughout your day and realize that you've done all of these things and you're spiraling in a direction and that wasn't even your intention? When you're in states of anxiety or discomfort or irritability or any of those not so favorable energetic feelings, you can learn to redirect your attention towards gratitude, towards love, compassion, kindness. These are all things that we practice
so that we can use them as tools. I look to my yoga practice as an experience with the tools that I've developed that really help me in my day-to-day life. And so after taking a final relaxation in Shavasana, this would be a great opportunity for meditation. Just finding an easy seated pose, something that you can maintain comfortably for as long as you want to direct your attention inward. You can, once again, find your breath. You can follow your breath. And you may notice after practicing that you find these little pockets of stillness, a time when you're actually not really thinking about much. Oftentimes when I'm meditating, I notice that my brain just does not shut off. And that's okay. Those are days that I choose japa or mantra. These are other elements, other tools of yoga, because I just know my brain is spiraling out that day. And rather than feel bad about it, I use a different tool. But there's some days when I sit and I realize I haven't actually had a thought in 10 to 15 seconds, and I have this feeling of calm, relaxation, stillness. And then once I notice it's there, it almost immediately goes away. But that's okay too. And so meditation is more about the practice of coming to stillness, having nothing to do, just for a moment. I mean, how often do you offer that to yourself, that moment of stillness, the pause, just to be? Because really, taking those moments of pause in your practice can be a wonderful way to get yourself to pause a little bit more in your life and then move forward with intention towards the things that you really want, the things that are important to your values. And that can be a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful result of your practice. So I hope this worked today. We'll see. Would love any comments that you have, and just share with me, if I do continue this, what would you like? What would you like to see? What would be helpful? And until next time.